Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. And would you look who joins us, who's back in the building. Christopher Hamill returns from his hiatus. Hamster, nice to have you back, my friend. How are you?
Well, thank you very much. What a pleasant welcome. I'm actually feeling rougher than a badger's arse this morning. Had a very disrupted night's sleep, but you know, I've had my coffee and I've reinstalled OBS, which is what I used to record Sunday Vibes, because it's been messing up. So, you know, fresh start. Let's roll.
Fingers crossed it works today. Patter, how are you, my friend?
I'm just thinking about how rough a badger's arse
Really is, yeah.
Given that the only thing I know about badgers is they use their fur to make, you know, like shaving brushes when you like lather up.
Oh Christ!
So I imagine that the ones from the arse are like extremely low grade.
Jesus, let's quickly move away from badgers' arseholes, shall we, at the earliest opportunity. Let's move on to our main topic. There's no clean segue here. We're talking about Liverpool versus Manchester United, because we had loads of Man United questions sent in. We had one from Jay Kleins 3. He says, can Manchester United really stay at the summit of the Premier League? Siva the God said, is it possible for Manchester United to win the league, and what signings need to be made? So we're going to really discuss the title race today and whether or not Manchester United are actually viable contenders. Hamster, do you believe they're in the race?
Woof. What a way to come in. I mean, first of all, should we just establish how United have got here? Because
yeah, go on.
I think you lost 4 and drew 1 of your opening 10 games, and now you sit atop the league inexplicably with 36 points. I think this points tally is actually 2 fewer than Jose had put up at this time in 16-17. So it's not exactly a historic points tally, but it does represent solid progression, I guess, because you have to go back to 2013 under Sir Alex Ferguson to find United at the summit of the Premier League this late on in the season. So I think it probably feels like vindication at the moment for the United board persevering with Ollie. Of course, we've consistently said if Poch is out there, go and get him. I think we've treated Ollie...
disagree. We haven't all consistently said that. I have not said that we should go and get Poch. I actually don't even think Pat said that.
What do you mean? Off camera, you might have. You know, you're a coward on camera.
I've not said that Man United should go and get Poch once.
What, this season? I think last season we probably spent the whole year saying now he's available, United should probably bite the bullet, go in for Ollie. Not that Ollie's doing a bad job. There's always just been question marks of, can he do an exceptional job? And I don't even know if he's doing an exceptional job this time round. They're just making steady progress while people around them crumble. But he does deserve credit for slowly moulding the squad in his image, I guess. And they've been extremely good in the league of late. 11 without defeat. I think it's 15 games unbeaten on the road as well, winning 12 of them. So there's been a mentality shift that deserves a fair bit of credit, especially with United more often than not going behind in those games. Right? I think you've won 18 points from losing positions this season, which is 8 more than Liverpool, who was second. Yeah, so I don't know, is that bad game management in the first half or good character in the second half? I'll leave that to the United fans to decide. And if you can get something against Liverpool, Tomlinson, I mean, the next 2 game weeks are very kind, aren't they? So the Ollie's at the wheel chat will continue to be insufferable. It will go on for another 2 weeks if you can get a draw at Anfield. And I do think this is a nice game week to really measure Ollie's progress, because you lost at Anfield in January in 2020, right? I think it was 2-0, but put out a fairly sort of conservative lineup. I think I remember Pereira being in attacking midfield. So this is going to be a better barometer in terms of the progress you've made, because the squad is much better now and much more coherent. And you know, are you more confident of a result this time around, Joe?
No. I mean, does any team ever go to Anfield confident? Like, I think they're unbeaten at home in 4 years, aren't they, or 5 years?
Well, you know,
in the league,
it was all contextual, wasn't it? Are more confident, I guess.
I mean, I suppose I'm slightly more confident. The team is drastically and vastly improved, hasn't it? First and foremost, and I think United, you pretty much know how United are going to line up on the weekend. I'd be surprised to see any sort of deviation from De Gea, Wan-Bissaka, Bailly, Maguire, Shaw, Fred McTominay, Bruno Pogba, and then probably Rashford and Cavani if Martial picked up that hamstring injury. I'd be surprised to see a massive deviation. There might be 1 or 2 changes, whereas 12 months ago, you weren't really sure what 11 was going to be put out, and that has been largely down to the fact Bruno has kind of come in, settled everything down. But United are week on week slowly improving, and you're right, the next 2 weeks in the league might not be that important, but we've also got to play Liverpool in the Cup as well. That feels like quite a big game after dropping out the Carabao Cup semi-final, crashing out of the Champions League as well. So I feel like that FA Cup game against Liverpool is bigger than it should be, probably. Obviously not as big as the game today, which is massive. But I don't think United's season is going to be defined by it. I still don't think United are going to win the Premier League. But I think Ollie's doing an exceptional job this season, particularly in sort of squad building. I think he's doing really good work behind the scenes there. So I'm pretty positive about Manchester United right now, but I'm not saying we're going to win the league. I still think Manchester City and Liverpool are going to compete. I still think Liverpool are going to do it, even though Man City are favourites. But yeah, United are definitely improving, right, Pat?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, like, this is the thing. Like, are United seriously in the title race? I don't know. I think the odds of United... The odds of United winning the title are probably under 10%, but things with under a 10% chance of happening happen all the time. So, I mean, like, it's definitely possible. On the other hand, I think the route to United maybe getting slightly worse is maybe easier to see than the route to them getting better. Because, like, for instance, if Bruno got injured, everything would fall apart. Whereas it's quite hard to see... Like, yes, Rashford and Martial can be better than they are right now, but I don't see either of them, like, turning in, like, Mo Salah level performances in the back half of the campaign. I mean, Rashford more than Martial maybe, but still. And I think when you look at the numbers, they're pretty much solidly the 5th best side in the league. Like, I think obviously Liverpool and City are ahead of them. I still think Chelsea are probably ahead of them overall and have got enough talent that it will be okay. And actually, Villa's performances have been better. How much you trust those is another question. But Villa's performances have been better so far this season. So, I mean...
Yeah.
I don't know. It's definitely possible. And I think if they got, like, a game-changing signing in January, it would... My confidence would increase. But I don't think they would get the signing in January who would make that difference. On the other hand, I completely agree with Joe that, like, Solskjaer has done a fantastic job this season. I mean... More than any of those teams ahead of them, like, apart from maybe Villa, and even then, I'm not sure. Like, the squad is full of really obvious holes. And I say this, like, we've defended guys like Fred on this before. We've certainly defended Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Like, we've defended Harry Maguire. But I think it's still very clear to everybody, even the most biased Man United fan, that there are, like... really big problems with this squad, and really big problems not just with the squad but with the first 11. And Solskjaer has found a way not just to, like, paper over those cracks, but to get dominant performances out of this team. My one issue is that I don't think Man United ever seem to exert a great deal of control in their games. I wrote about this the other day, and Chris, I think you alluded to it when you talked about Man United winning points from losing positions. When Man United are a goal down and they need to just attack, they can do it. But even in the games against Leeds, which obviously, 6-2 in the end, and the game against Villa, where I thought Man United were comfortably the better side, even in those games, they still were conceding attacks far too easily. It was still far too easy to go through Man United's midfield. And I think that given that this is a congested season, like loads of fixtures in a short period of time, energy being sapped, I think that being able to control a game, get your foot on the ball, pass it around and keep things calm is a really important tool. And that's something I see sides like Liverpool and Man City having to a much greater extent than this particular Man United side. Oh,
that's definitely a big problem for Manchester United, game control. But I think it comes from 2 defensive midfielders that are kind of patched in there, really. I don't think any of us would say that Scott McTominay is going to be a world-class midfielder, but what he is effective in the moment right now for the way Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to play, and the same can be said of Fred. Fred is really improving quite quickly at Manchester United and very quickly becoming a key member of the first team. His defensive numbers are exceptional this season. 4.7 tackles and interceptions. He leads us for pressures, I'd imagine, alongside maybe a Bruno. He's so key to how we want to press. But on the ball quality from those two, lacking a little bit. Not the best passes of the ball, not the best deep progression numbers. And when the ball is fed into them from centre-backs, you always have a little bit of a panic. Do you know what I mean? You never think, okay, they're just going to settle down and release the ball nicely. It's going to be a decent little cross-field ball. And the opposite is almost the case with Paul Pogba. Fantastic on the ball, going to really deliver from deep, nice progression of the ball, but his defensive numbers and his off-the-ball work are going to be really lacking. So United don't really have a midfielder that balances both of those things well.
It's the same with Matic, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
exactly
Matic is
the same.
It's one of those guys where this is the thing that both makes me impressed by what Solskjaer has done and makes me want to praise Man United, but also makes me wary of saying they've got a decent chance at the league, which is that there's always this trade-off. So yeah, for defensive solidity, McTominay and Fred is probably the best partnership, and that seems to be Ollie's preferred partnership. They've played the most together. But Matic does give you more control on the ball, but like you say, it's kind of, you maybe give up a little bit of that solidity. So there's always this trade-off. And so far, I think Ollie's doing a pretty good job of mixing and matching. But doing that consistently over the course of the season is so difficult.
It's when the opposition doesn't fall into one of those categories, right? Like he deploys Fred and McTominay against sides where he's going to need a little bit more protection, and I think they generally concede under a goal a game when Fred and McTominay start, which is really impressive and ticks the boxes in terms of what he wants to achieve maybe against fellow top 8 opposition. And then when they need to unleash a little bit more, it's Pogba, Matic, and I think you did exert a lot more control against Burnley. Pogba was doing more off the ball work. He was winning the ball higher up the pitch.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah, he was competing aerially, for example. So the hunger and desire was clearly there. And Pogba is probably the player that can straddle both game plans if you can get him firing on all cylinders, right? But yeah, I just think against better opposition, you maybe still sacrifice a little bit too much in the final third, bringing Fred and McTominay in. I do like, there's been little practical tweaks, haven't there? Like Luke Shaw's been unleashed a little bit down the left-hand side. I think he's putting up the second most key passes in your squad. Admittedly, he does take set pieces. But I think he's putting up 1.7 per 90, which is the second best after a Champions League campaign, I think, at United, in the first best league numbers he's put up. With Aaron Wan-Bissaka sort of filling in as a third centre-back, I think there's been a little bit more of a realisation of his limitations. We might talk about some more targets going forward that sort of highlight that, I guess. But I guess from Ollie's perspective, he's perfectly within his rights to expect more from Martial, from Greenwood, from not Cavani, because he's been great, hasn't he, in the very limited minutes he's been given. But what is it, 5 goals and assists for Martial, 1 in 700 minutes from Greenwood. Like, these are guys,
some whiffers as well, some huge chances.
Yeah, these guys need to start contributing to sort of maintain this level of performance, I guess. And even like Rashford's overperforming with his assists, hasn't he? He's got 12 goal contributions. I think Bruno's way out in front with 18. So there is still an over-reliance on Bruno, and the penalties have slowed down a little bit as well, which was always going to happen. But I suppose it's us finding one player that we think can plug that gap, that can operate in both systems, like I said.
Yeah, I don't think United will. I actually don't think United will sign a single player in January. I'd be really surprised if United went into the market in this window. I think there'll be a real reluctance, even though the Bruno move worked out so spectacularly last January, to try and kind of plug a hole with a player they're not 100% convinced on. But yeah, I agree with Martial. I definitely think there's more to come from him. And I think that is the one positive for United. They're top of the league. And I think there's still probably 2 or 3 areas that can fairly drastically improve. Martial might pick up his numbers as he did towards the back end of last season. Towards the back end of last season, he was playing some of his best football at United, if not his best football. Pogba is getting better week by week, looks much fitter than he did a month ago, and is starting to add a bit more creativity, playing in that sort of left attacking midfield role. Ollie's kind of found a home for him there in the last 6 weeks, where he didn't at the start of the season, playing with Fred and McTominay at the base, Bruno in the middle, and then Pogba coming in a little bit from like a left inside forward role. So that's quite exciting. And also we've seen the emergence of Eric Bailly over the last month, which is absolutely crucial to Manchester United's success over the Christmas period. He's been our best defender, covers for nearly all of Harry Maguire's most glaring weaknesses, incredibly athletic, and actually really underrated on the ball, can carry it into the midfield area and draw players into him. So I think there's 3 areas that are improving for Manchester United. So I don't think there's any reason we could say over the back half of the season they're going to get even better. I think that could actually happen. It's just whether or not, like you said, they can keep Bruno and Rashford fit, I think is very, very key, because we've seen Rashford blow out and Bruno is looking pretty tired already. But you guys think that maybe United should dip into the market, or would you say no, Pat?
I think it depends what you think the chances are of actually winning the league. Like, if I were United, maybe I'd look for a short-term deal, but like, I don't know. I think that probably top 4 is gettable. It really comes down to what my confidence is in that, I think. Because I don't think United do get their best target in January. Like, if I wrote about this the other day, and I said that I thought that it might be interesting if United used Paul Pogba to try and get Rodrigo Bentancur off Juventus. I don't think that's happening in January, though I had to kind of say maybe it could happen in January for the purposes of this scout report. Because I think he's the right kind of profile of player. I think that most Man United fans, from what I've seen, and certainly from what I see when I watch Man United, what you want is somebody who has that defensive awareness that Fred has, but is a much more sophisticated passer, can move the ball into the final third, can help you get your foot on the ball and essentially play downhill. And I think that he's definitely the right style of player. You know, a guy like Ndidi would also be good, but I don't think he's going to give you everything that you want. He's going to give you outstanding defensive performance. But I think my bigger issue is if Bruno disappears, you need that guy who can do the ball progression. I'm not really certain who's available in that position in January. So
you pick Bentancur, right, because he's effectively can put up Fred's defensive numbers, but gets the ball into the final third a little bit more, which is what I feel United are lacking at the moment, isn't it? Just a superstar Swiss Army knife midfielder.
Yeah, I think that they just need a guy who's like great in possession and can also cover ground. And he's also put up creative numbers in the past, which is obviously like a good thing to have. But that's that mold of player. You know, there's also like Bruno Guimaraes at Lyon, who I think looks kind of similar in the numbers. Like, that might be an interesting candidate for United as well. But I don't know. I mean, I think that probably this season you can roll with what you've got. Give guys like Greenwood minutes, maybe give Diallo minutes, like over the back half of the campaign, and then you'll have a better idea of what you need to go for in the summer. Like, I understand what you guys are saying, like, as in, oh, you know, like, he needs more out of guys like Greenwood, but I also think like a goal in 700 minutes from a guy of Greenwood's age is kind of what you'd expect if it weren't for the fact that everything Greenwood hit went in last season. Like, I think that there's an understanding at United that some of these players are going to take time to develop. And I think they can afford to be patient there and maybe keep their powder dry for the summer.
Yeah, I agree. And also, like, I think Fred, what you sacrifice in a potentially ball-playing ability, you make up with. And I feel like it's probably hard to quantify without me having the numbers in front of me now, in, like, pure energy. Like, he actually sets all of our tempos throughout the whole midfield, Fred. When we don't have him, we look so much more sluggish and lazy, just because what United with Fred get is just suddenly like a mad dash, 45 yards, springs into a tackle, and it sets a whole sort of new life into the team. Where I think maybe United would have looked to recruit had there not been an issue is in the right back department. Obviously, we've let Timothy Fosu-Mensah go to buy Leverkusen, I think he went to in the end, right? For like €2 million, approaching the end of his contract. Not overly surprised about that. Brandon Williams not getting too many minutes. But behind Wan-Bissaka, we have a bit of a bit of a gaping hole there, to be totally honest with you. Tuanzebe's filled in there, Timothy Fosu-Mensah's filled in there, Brandon Williams is filled in there, but we don't actually have competition for Wan-Bissaka. What you've seen at left back with Shaw and Telles is the competition definitely bring the best out of Shaw. He's made vast strides this season comparatively to last year and kept Telles out of the team. Wan-Bissaka, obviously a fantastic defender, but not good past the halfway line. On the ball, very shaky. And I think if Kieran Trippier hadn't picked up the betting ban, United would have been extremely interested in signing him in January. And I don't know whether Atletico would have been willing to let him go, because obviously he plays a lot of minutes. They're top of the league with 2 games in hand. So they might have been reluctant to do so, but he would have added a little bit more creativity to this United team that I think maybe is missing on the right-hand side, because we are quite a lopsided team, right, Hamster?
Yeah, my signal just went for a full minute there, so apologies if I repeat anything. It sort of dipped out when Pat was talking about Wilfred Ndidi, who I just think, would be priced out of a move in January.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'll move on, because I did like the Bentancur suggestion, but apologies if I do repeat any points that have been raised. But yeah, Kieran Trippier, a right back. I was very surprised how advanced the talks were prior to that 10-month ban coming into effect. It looked like, from at least the reports I read, that United had agreed, a fee of around 20 million, and Atletico were. It's not like they're unhappy with Kieran Trippier, right? But they sort of are willing to make their money back on him after 2 seasons of service. And yeah, now that move has been totally scuppered. I mean, when we talk about Aaron Wan-Bissaka lacking that sort of tenacity going forward. That does look like, 0.5 key passes per 90, 2.5 crosses per game with a 13% success rate. They really aren't the numbers that you'd expect, a fullback at a top club to put up. But we know, we're forgiving of that because his defensive numbers are great, right? Like, he puts the most tackles up at Manchester United, which is why I just sort of talked about earlier, Ollie's little tweak in terms of that back three with Shaw pushing on and sort of utilising him a little bit more in an advanced department. But I do think it's time to rotate AWB in and out of the team a little bit more. He's put up the 3rd most minutes at United since the start of the 1920 season, after De Gea, after Harry Maguire. I think they're the other way around, sorry. So, he needs a rest. He's a young player. He could do with learning his craft from a more experienced person, particularly in the forward department. So Trippier made a lot of sense, I guess, in that regard. But like I said, it doesn't look like they're going in for him now. And I was surprised Atletico were willing to sell him. 5 assists in 14 appearances this season. He's created as many chances as João Felix per 90. So he's been in really, really exceptional form. But I'm struggling now to think of an alternative, particularly at that price point. Max Aarons has been spoke about. I'm a little bit confused at United's willingness to jettison Brandon Williams. I think he's probably been entreated unfairly by sects of the fans after certain performances, let's say.
Definitely.
And he's naturally right-footed. I know that he sort of broke through the team on the left-hand side, right? But he could maybe be utilised on the right a little bit more. But it looks like Southampton or Everton are going to get him on loan. I think Bayer Leverkusen also interested after taking Fosu-Mensah. So you might see, him go out on loan to pick up more experience. But I haven't really got any targets in terms of right-back. But maybe United fans can be a little bit more excited a touch further up the pitch with Amad Diallo coming in, because he's predominantly played on the right wing for Atalanta, or at least in their youth games, right? And that is a position that we've talked ourselves to death over, haven't we? So maybe we'll see him thrown at the deep end and sort of swim instead of sink on that right-hand side towards the end of the season, because someone needs to take that chance-creating burden off of Bruno.
Yeah, I think I'd be surprised to see Amad Diallo get minutes this season for United in the Premier League. I think he'll probably drop into that under-23 squad. But you never know, especially if there's a couple of injuries or something like that. You never know. Should we just have a quick chat about the game today then? Because obviously it is massive, Liverpool versus United. Pat, how do you see it going? Do you see just Liverpool just dominating from the off?
Where is it?
It's at Anfield.
Dominating from the off. I do think that Liverpool will have control of the game, and I think that United will be absolutely fine with that. Like, it's one of those situations where both sides will kind of probably get to do what they like to do,
Yeah.
which is that United will get to play extremely quickly, like really fast transition play, and Liverpool will be probably happy to risk that, assume that particularly by playing midfielders in defence, that they'll have the legs to cover, and then they'll be able to counter-attack themselves. So I don't know. I mean, like my money would be on Liverpool, because I do think Liverpool are a significantly better side than Man United. I find these incredibly hard to predict, though, because United in the last couple of years have shown an ability to pull out results. Less against Liverpool than they have against City. But, yeah, I think it's quite an interesting stylistic matchup, and I think to a degree it kind of depends on the midfielders Liverpool have got available. Liverpool, I think, are in better form than people realise. Like, when you look at those games over Christmas, like, pretty unlucky to drop points in them. But on the other hand, those were the games that last season we said they should probably drop points in some of these games, and they just never did. This season, you know, when they've been kind of, maybe it's been like 1.8 expected goals to like 0.7, a lot of those have ended in draws for them. So I think that Liverpool has still got to be, you know, substantial favourites for this. And there's so much passing in this Liverpool side now, way more than there's been in the past, way more. You know, because you have Fabinho and sometimes Henderson playing in the back line, because you've got Thiago in the midfield, and obviously you've got Trent back. You've got a much more dominant, and actually Curtis Jones, who the one thing that pops in Curtis Jones' numbers is he's a fantastic passer. They are actually a much more sophisticated passing side than they've been at any time under Klopp, and that's quite interesting. So I would back them to pick their way through, but they are going to have to be very, very careful, because United are one of the most frightening sides in transition right now, with Bruno running it, and just with this is the thing, you know, the advantage of United having essentially no real centre forwards in their preferred lineup is that they're extremely difficult to mark on the break, and everybody is kind of a dual threat. They can carry the ball and they can score goals.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to see what Liverpool do at the back, because Joel Matip still, I don't think, is trained. Still a doubt as of filming. So at the moment, let's say Joel Matip doesn't play, Chris. Do you go as a back to Hendo and Fabinho up against sort of Cavani, Rashford, Martial if he's fit, or do you throw in a Nat Phillips or Reece Williams?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, Henderson's has been a much more progressive passer this season than people have given him credit for. I think he's in the top 5 for people that have worked it into the final third in Europe's top 5 leagues. So it'd be a shame if you're Jurgen Klopp to lose that. Does he have the personnel, to replace that output in midfield? Does he have a little bit more depth there? Probably. I don't think Nat Phillips. Yeah, I don't want to dismiss him, but when I've watched him, it's felt like he's struggled more than some other players on the peripheries. Maybe that's just because Curtis Jones and Nico Williams have made it look relatively easy, right, at times. So, yeah, I think that's probably the safe option. In this fixture last season, it was interesting that Ollie played that back 3, back 5, right, with Luke Shaw on the left-hand side, which I'm kind of glad he's jettisoned this season. Like, Luke Shaw did look good at left centre-back, but like we've seen this season, he also looks good going forward. So I think United are going to be a little bit more adventurous. Like Pat says, they're still very dangerous in transition. I think they've scored the most breakaway goals this campaign. I think they lead the league on 5. But I do think there's a bit more game management there than last season. I think Dan James started up front as well with Martial, didn't he? So that was a good indication that it was just all about pace that day. Whereas, I mean, I don't know what the complexion of United's midfield will be. Who do you think he'll start if he does start in that 4-2-3-1?
I think it'll definitely be Scott and Fred. I'd be really surprised if it's anything other than that, with Bruno sat in front of him and then Pogba floating from the left, Rashford from the right, and then, depending on Martial's fitness, Martial or Cavani up top. I think that's almost definitely what United will go for. And then
did you say a diamond?
Sorry,
my signal shot a bit.
No, it can't.
No, Joe, I'm having issues with you as well, man. You sound like a calculator.
Sorry. No, I'm saying I think it would be Paul Pogba sort of as a left winger, left attacking midfielder, the way he's played over the last month or so. Bruno in the hole, and then a defensive 2 of Fred and Scott will be the way United go. I'd be surprised to see anything other than that.
Absolute Dalek FC for me over here, but I did eventually get that, and I think you probably called it. I thought that maybe because he started against Burnley, he might be thinking about dropping Pogba and reverting to that McTominay Fred double pivot, but let's hope that doesn't happen. And do you see Donny van de Beek getting any game time soon? Because we've obviously spoke about we want more from Martial, we want a little bit more from Greenwood, Cavani offers more from the bench than andMatic coming on like he did last season against Liverpool. But Donny van de Beek, like, is he going to start a big game anytime soon?
He's definitely not going to start a big game. The issue is that Bruno's just getting better and better. Like, I think Ollie bought Donny thinking, okay, we can rotate and give the pressure off of Bruno a little bit more. But the bonus and positive of having Donny in the team is you're one less signing needed for when Pogba leaves in the summer. Because Pogba is going to leave in the summer unless there's some drastic circumstances change. And I wish him the best at Madrid or PSG, wherever he goes. And you kind of a little bit more set in the midfield department with Donny there, then maybe you can think about signing a more out-and-out defensive midfielder with the money that you get from Paul Pogba, which I think United probably will try and do. So not too worried about Donny van de Beek, to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of chat going on externally about Donny, but I think internally United won't be too worried about that situation at all. So yeah, I think I'm looking forward to the game today. Anyway, should we move on to a quick fire question? Because I'm concerned we're just chatting about Manchester United too much here.
Sure.
Right, let's move on to another team that are flying in the title race right now. Brendan Cummings says, are Man City peaking at the perfect time, Pat?
No. I mean, the perfect time to peak would have been about 2 months earlier. Or maybe not to peak, but to be good. I don't know. Like, I think that Pep has done a really good job of reconfiguring the squad. I think clearly what we were seeing this season, people were talking about like players in different positions, and all this stuff. But like, actually what I saw was like, I thought a pretty significant stylistic rebuild from Pep. And bringing in certain personnel as well, obviously bringing Stones in and the increased emergence of Joao Cancelo. So I think that we've seen this a few times before where Pep has kind of been displeased with something about his team and like rebuilt them on the fly in the middle of the season. And now they are by far the best defensive team in the league. I don't think they should be too tired going into the back half of the season. Because they've got a bunch of players who've been injured who'll come back relatively fresh, and also because they do just have such extreme squad size. And I know Pep said, "Oh, we're just running less," which I think is kind of classic Pep bull. But it's interesting to think about. I don't know. I mean, I'd put them probably pretty much level with Liverpool as title favourites down the stretch, depending on what happens in the Champions League, I think. But certainly that it's been good that they've come into great form just as Liverpool have gone through a slightly unlucky slump. But this is what City do. Like, City are just kind of a bit of a juggernaut, and they're relentless, and they chase down who's ahead of them. So I don't know. I don't really have a very clear answer on that because I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Like yes, I don't know.
I get what Brendan's saying.
They've got a good chance to win the league.
I get what Brendan's saying in the sense that a lot of the heat is on Chelsea for that poor run of form after their 17-game unbeaten streak, and then Manchester United are overperforming, so people are talking about their title chances more so than they are Manchester City, where Manchester City are clearly the bigger side. And I think Pep will like that the focus perhaps isn't on Manchester City or their various struggles that they seem to have come through them, right? So they're kind of not under the microscope at the moment. But that's taking other things into account, isn't it? Like the media, the press, external pressures, rather than actually just the football that's being played. Because ideally they would have been, would have sorted out the dynamic of their starting lineup after 7 or 8 games. It didn't happen, but now it has. And Ruben Diaz and John Stones have played together 7, 8 times and looked pretty flawless. Joao Cancelo, I think, is probably one of the most underrated players in the league at the moment. I don't think people are putting enough respect on the improvement he's made this season. At right back, he's offering an awful lot going forward, whilst not really relenting on any of his defensive duties. Zinchenko's always a little bit underrated. I'm glad he's getting a run of games over Mendy. I would just play Zinchenko all day there. And Gundogan, who we put in our underrated team of the season, I think he's gone from strength to strength since then. You know, not saying there's a direct correlation. He's probably not the biggest Football Daily fan, but there's a lot of parts that are improving, which, you know, I don't necessarily see at other sides. Maybe Liverpool with Thiago Alcantara coming back. I feel like they're kind of running at optimum level, and they deserve a lot of credit for that, given the injuries crisis they've sort of gone through, right? But City are the team I can see making the biggest strides. So yeah, I guess the perfect time to peak, but only because other teams have allowed it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are coming into form at like an ideal time though. After Christmas, I think like you can't win a league early doors, is the old saying, isn't it? But you can certainly lose one, and they're just like bumbling along underneath the radar, which is perfect for Pep Guardiola. No heat on him at all. I do still think that there are problems in the centre forward area for them though, and Aguero rapidly needs to find some fitness, because as much as KDB at false 9 and Gundogan flying through the middle, and Foden, I think Foden's still the top scorer in the squad, which is still a little bit of a concern for me. So I think Aguero needs to find some fitness pretty quickly, but he probably will. The next one was sent in by Harold Hot Hake. He says, are Newcastle going to be sucked into a relegation scrap, Hamster?
I mean, they're awful, aren't they? They're just... I don't really have a good word to say about this Newcastle outfit, to be perfectly frank. And like, I don't want to beat up on Steve Bruce, because he's doing the job that as a chairman you sort of expect him to do at a Premier League club, which is trying to stave off relegation with this similar sort of football, you know, Rafa was deploying, but just not as like advanced. I think probably as a club they could be criticised more. Like they have spent money, haven't they? They've recruited well. Like they added Joe Lewis, Callum Wilson. I mean, Joe Linton obviously cost a bomb, and they're still yet to get the best out of him. But I think it's fair for the Newcastle fans, given the personnel they have, to expect, you know, better than the worst football in the league. And last season, I do think they were playing the worst football in the league. And it is insulting that teams like Brighton and the job that Potter's doing is compared to the job that Bruce is doing. But there we have it. I do think
you've got it in there. You've got it in there. You had to get it in there somehow.
Get that ticked off the bingo card at home. But I think they deserve to go down if they carry on as is my opinion.
I think they'll probably be safe this season, just because there are some absolute dross sides in the league this year. And I'm just looking at the table now, and they've at least got a 7-point gap now, which doesn't sound loads, but I think come the end of this season, like, teams might be safe with like 28 points. Honestly, there's some really poor teams in the league this season.
The game against Sheffield, did you watch it?
I didn't. No, I didn't. But I did read some Newcastle fans' thoughts on it. It did sound pretty turgid. Like, Fulham are playing all right football though at the moment, aren't they? They just, I still don't think they've got like. If Fulham had Callum Wilson, I'd be backing them to stay up. But I feel like they're just not going to score enough goals. I don't know. They're certainly in contention, aren't they? And as much as I know that you love Brighton, I still think they're in a little bit of trouble as well.
Yeah, they need about 3 centre forwards, don't they? Because they're absolutely bushing the final third at the moment.
They really need to, like, the goal scoring is becoming a big issue for them. Having said that, you know,
I was looking at some of the players they have on the pitch yesterday against Manchester City, and to actually extract that from some of those players is still, I don't think people are giving him enough credit. And like Bernard, was it Bernardo? Bernardo down the left wing. I mean, for the first was blowing for the first 20 minutes, and I just thought, Christ, like they actually do need to strike now in the January transfer market. I won't go on any more about it. Yeah,
100%. I also think like Burnley need to sign a striker. Burnley have scored 9 goals this season. Like, they need to get somebody through the door that can hit the back of the net for them, because I don't know what's happened to Barnes and Wood, but they're just not doing the business as they once were. 9 goals after 18 games or 17 games is just is a struggle for them. So I know that Newcastle fans are moaning, but imagine Burnley have scored 9 goals, which is how many less than Newcastle, which is nine less
fewer
than Newcastle. So they're also in a bit of trouble. Let's do one more then before we do a very quick personal question. Which striker would you take in their prime? Let's just rattle this off. Shearer, Rooney, Drogba, Shevchenko, Wright or Crespo? Pat?
Depends on the team.
Okay.
Depends on the team. Like if I were Brighton, let's look at Brighton.
Yeah.
If I were Brighton, you better believe I'd take Alan Shearer, because I think that team has.
Yeah.
I think that team creates actually plenty of chances, and I just want a guy who's absolutely slapping them in. And Shearer's like the Wayne Gretzky of the Premier League. Like he's probably the best pure goal scorer the Premier League has ever seen. You know, like the only guy who gets close and didn't come near the longevity is probably Van Nistelrooy. Oh, and I suppose Andy Cole. But if I were a side like an Arsenal, you know, where I need a forward who's like able to create and a bit more well-rounded, I'd probably go for Rooney, actually. Same. Out of those guys. Drogba as well actually shows some real creativity, but Rooney, to me, unless I'm missing somebody on that list, Rooney is the most well-rounded on that list by far, to me. And also, Rooney's probably the most fun of all those players. Like Rooney at his peak was so exciting to watch, like so dynamic, like absolutely incredible passer, like scored just screamer after screamer. Like I've always loved Wayne Rooney as a player, and I think that he would be amazing in a current Premier League side because he's strong enough to play with his back to goal. He's incredibly fast and direct, but also does have, you know, that ability to pick a pass. So yeah, I would love to see peak Wayne Rooney playing for a decent side now. I think he'd transform them, whereas I think Shearer would really improve a side, but I think he needs to be in a team that creates chances.
I think I would go Rooney as well. Chris?
Yeah, I think Pat's pretty much took the words out of my mouth. I think a teenage Wayne Rooney, like, he's comparable to a teenage Kylian Mbappe right now. I think in today's market, he'd just be worth stupid money.
God, yeah. Right, let's do a personal question then. This is quality from Jack Davis. He says, what is the best and worst predictions you made on a video? I know my worst instantly is Gabriel Jesus will be better than Kylian Mbappe. Absolute whiffingtons, that was. Don't know why I said it either. I think I was trying to be controversial at the time. What an absolute stinker. What about you boys?
Oh, man.
There's so many. God.
Yeah. So many, yeah.
Genuinely a little bit flummoxed at the moment, because I think a lot of our opinions are just sensible rather than like at best I feel like has to be a little bit outlandish. Like you have to have put your head on the chopping block and it come good.
Yeah, agreed.
Can people remember ones for other people? Like, can one of you remember one from me? Because I feel like you might do a better job of figuring out like what I said that was.
You were very team Aaron Wan-Bissaka before Aaron Wan-Bissaka had really played that much football.
Yeah, you were. That was a good one because I remember the Mounier versus Aaron Wan-Bissaka podcast. You were very Aaron Wan-Bissaka as he broke through at Palace to join Manchester United. We were all quite. Who was it? Nicolas Pepe. We liked that move. I remember us talking about.
In terms of worst.
Right. Yeah, but even then, I remember us saying like we didn't like the price. I remember like saying, I thought that Iwobi was actually like a big loss there. Like I remember even with like generally with stuff, I think we tend to talk over the positives and negatives, so it kind of like covers our asses a little bit.
Yeah, it's ignoring a lot.
Oh, I remember.
He's going mad.
I remember being very hot on Iheanacho. You know, I still think he's a good player, but I was super hot on Iheanacho when he was at City. That was, I don't know. There must be something more embarrassing that because I don't feel like that's that bad.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Hamster, have you got any? Maybe yours might be Potter in 12 months' time if he's like dropped out of the league or something.
It could be,
he's
and I think
well now, isn't it?
But that wouldn't prove Chris was wrong about him. You know,
you've all probably guessed that. I think a hill I'm willing to die on. But go on, Pat.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I'm just saying that like if they did get relegated, like having played this way, I don't think that that's like incontrovertible proof that Chris was wrong about Potter. I think Chris is right about Potter, And even if they get relegated, I'll still bang that drum. I think you're right about Potter. I think he's done a great job. I think they're probably not quite as good as their numbers suggest. But should they be in a relegation battle? Absolutely not. And if they get relegated, I think you'll still be right.
Yeah, because sometimes people are just unfortunate. And
yes, exactly.
That has happened this season. And I mean, lest we forget, he led them to their record points total last season. I think people feel like he's just started out now. Okay, one of the first times I properly did some digging numbers-wise and really like cross-referenced a player because I wasn't really aware of the team they played for was it Juan Jordan at Eibar? When he was playing at Eibar, we sort of touted him for a move to a better Spanish team, and like, lo and behold, I think maybe a year later, after we talked him up on the podcast, maybe even less than that, maybe it was 6 months, he moved to Sevilla and continued to put up very good numbers. That was quite a niche one. That was quite satisfying. And Che Adams is probably, you know, I tipped him to be
He's doing all right this season, though.
Yeah, my dark horse for last
player.
season. And then he was awful in patches. And then that was sort of roundly mocked. And then he's come good this year. Worse, there's probably just too many.
Yeah, so many, man, isn't there? There's so many. We get so many wrong just because it's good to make statements on videos to get people chatting.
Click.
Mainly. But yeah, should we just wrap it up there? Pat, what have you been chatting about on the podcast this week?
Oh, just a last thing on that. I also think there's no shame in getting overexcited about a player. You know, sometimes you're just like,
definitely.
I saw this player and they made me enjoy football, and so you want to believe they're going to be a superstar, and it's a bit embarrassing when they're not. But I also think that's nice that like we watch enough football that we like see these players and kind of think, oh, I wonder what that player could be. You know, I think that's nice.
Gary Hooper. I thought he'd bang at Norwich. There you go.
Gary Hooper. You were kind of right about Armstrong, though. Didn't you say Armstrong would be a good signing for Southampton? And we were all like, Jesus. And like, yeah, he's not going to set the world on fire, but he's a pretty competent player.
I think it'd be similar if you signed Christie as well. Arsenal have weirdly been linked with Ryan Christie from Celtic because he's only got 18 months left on his contract. He's like a physical specimen like Armstrong. And if he's told to press, he will just press relentlessly. And he has decent ball carrying skills and a sort of nice left foot. So yeah. Yeah, Armstrong's decent. Thanks for that. What were we saying about the podcast, sorry?
Pat, what were we talking about?
Well, the podcast this week was a double guest. I had Dave Jackson on because I wanted to talk about Ozil, what he gave to Arsenal, the way he changed the club, and his legacy. Because I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans, you know, like really excited, like celebrating that he's leaving. And I understand that he's been a bit of an albatross around the club's neck. But at the same time, I don't really understand like cheering his potential departure. Like, that seems ridiculous to me. So we talked about that, and then I had Dougie Critchie on to discuss the Italian title race, which is ludicrous. This weird Conte side, which is somehow one of the most exciting attacking teams in Europe, like Antonio Conte's Inter Milan. And then we talked also about Moussa Dembele to Atletico Madrid, which I think is a really, really intriguing move. So yeah, we talked about those and the effect that might have both on the Spanish title race and the French one.
Yeah, nice. By the way, I was looking at the La Liga table last night. How have Atletico Madrid only conceded 6 goals? What's going on there?
Jan Oblak is having the season of his life, man.
6 goals.
Like, the season. Yeah, did you see the statistic that said that every team in Europe's top 5 leagues has conceded at least twice as many goals as Atleti have this season?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Hamster,
you got anything to plug?
Oh, Christ. I'm now just thinking about Moussa Dembele. Go and watch the latest Explained on Frank Lampard and how, you know, 2 months on from proclaiming that he'd fix the defence, it now looks like it's about to fall apart. Such as this season.
Yeah, another one of our predictions nailed there. Yeah, thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.